I am here with the living legend, former NYPD Officer Sal Greco. Sal, good to finally meet you.
It's an honor to see you.
Honor to see you. We're here outside Vinny's by the Sea. We're in Fort Lauderdale. I think everybody knows you, Sal, but maybe some people from Crowdsource the Truth don't. Why don't you give us a real quick bit of background on you for people who maybe haven't seen you before. What exactly happened to you?
So I was a New York City police officer for 14 years. I served my community with distinction. I have numerous awards, but apparently somebody was irked that I was a friend of the infamous Roger Stone. You know, he's my best friend. So somebody was irked there and they started a whole witch hunt. It lasted 19 months. They made all kinds of crazy allegations.
Witch hunt on you?
Witch hunt on me. They had people following me. They had one guy following me all the way to the hospital where my father ended up dying. It's really sickening stuff. Fugazi subpoenas. They used administrative subpoenas for in a criminal manner, which you can't do, to get my records.
Wow.
Okay.
But it was the NYPD.
This is the NYPD.
Why did they do that? What do you think is the reason? Because you know stuff about Eric Adams going back to the days.
Yeah, well, Eric, yeah. Well, that comes a little later because Eric becomes the mayor in 2022. But in 2021, while he's being investigated, they had this whole crazy January 6th narrative, and they kept trying to include Roger.
Oh, that he planned.
That he's there or some kind, you know, that's what the old media spin was. But here's the facts, that there was no criminality involving myself or Roger. We weren't near the Capitol that day. We were in a hotel room, and any inconsequential contact with someone was just that. It's like meeting you on the street.
Right.
I met you for the first
You
time,
guys were there plotting something.
Yeah,
and
they were
that
trying
was like the war room at the hotel.
Yeah, and which never existed, by the way. And here's the easiest thing. I was there. There was no war room, and I could tell you why. The name that keeps coming up is Steve Bannon, and Steve Bannon and Roger just don't see eye to eye. I could tell you that firsthand.
Two alphas, right?
Yeah, and I gotta be honest, I'm not fond of Steve Bannon because he perjured himself at Roger's trial, which is why Roger was convicted to begin with. But people continue to spin a different narrative when that's not the truth. That is the truth. He perjured himself because he said one thing on the House committee when he was testifying there, and another thing at his trial. Can't be one. Can't be two different stories. That's a felony.
Here.
That's a felony. He's also connected to Miles Guo. There's a lot going on around that, and everyone everything he does is political. I've noticed one thing in life. Ever since Donald Trump's, prosecutions, everyone screams everything's political.
Right, including Eric Adams.
Including Eric Adams,
which we have to get to.
Which means if you steal from taxpayers, you bribe people, it's political. Right. I guess if you shoot somebody, is that political? I mean, we're getting to that level now.
They've got Luigi now, so we're going to see.
Oh, yeah, Luigi, which I noticed Eric Adams was walking with. That was the most police work that man has done in his entire life because he was hiding his whole career as a police officer. So,
well, wait a minute. So we've got a lot to get to here because you first of all, your Twitter handle that people really should be following. Anybody who's interested in knowing about what's going on with Eric Adams, NYPD, you have information. You and John McCarry and Eric Din, you guys have, I think, the best podcasts for information about NYPD and the corruption going on in Eric Adams' office. Tell everybody how to get to the Sal Greco Show and what's the best way to reach you and support your show.
So on my Twitter handle, it's the Sal Greco, at the Sal Greco. Same thing on Instagram. For my show, it's The Sal Greco Show. It's on YouTube and Rumble. Also, you can listen on any streaming platforms, podcasts. And for my friends, John D. McCarry Jr., that's his handle on Twitter. Eric Dim is Eric Dim, and the finest unfiltered podcast you can catch.
It's a great show. I love how when it starts, I feel like I'm on like Hill Street Blues, and they're doing that, whatever it is, in the morning where all the cops are there and they're telling them, the daily whatever. Yeah. Because that format is great, right? And so you left New York, and here we are. We're in Fort Lauderdale. First of all, it's like paradise down here.
This is what life in exile looks like and feels like.
Not bad.
This is exile. When you exile from New York City, you're kicked out for political reasons. You come to exile, and this is...
Are you a surfer?
This is exile. No, I'm not a surfer. I'm a runner. I'm a, workout guy.
It's a wonderful beach down here, and there's all kinds of stuff that... This is like your spot, huh?
Yep. Well, one of them. There's many. This is Lauderdale by the Sea. This is Commercial Boulevard. There's numerous famous places here, up and down, straight down to North Federal Highway. So, and then there's also, you can hook a right. We go down to Oakland Park through A1A. But this is basically the beginning parts of Fort Lauderdale's Calmer. Of course, if you keep going down on A1A, you're going to hit Las Olas, and that's where all the action is as far as the tourists and the kids, the younger generation. But this is
nice beach community over here.
What could we say? Is this like for New York City? I guess you would say this is paradise compared to what you have in New York City.
Absolutely, and I mean, the crime is kind of like non-existent compared to New York, right? People are nice down here.
Yeah, you have, but there is an influx. It's a little bit of a. People like to give you a misdirection on that. There is some crime here, and there's homelessness here. And that's where you see a lot of homeless people on the corners. People say Ron DeSantis is a great governor. That's not entirely true. People's insurance skyrocketed here, your home, your car.
Insurance.
Yeah, and he's done absolutely nothing about it because, as you know, he took money from that racket, from the insurance lobbies. And so not everybody in Florida is fond of the guy. Is he a better governor than Kathy Hochul? Well, of course. We're never even going to compare the two.
Right.
But is he what's best for Florida? I don't know.
Maybe Matt Gaetz is next.
There could be him. Well, now he's I believe he has his own show. I don't know if he still wants to continue doing politics. I mean, plus he's got a whirlwind of allegations and stuff coming at him.
I think that's fake, though, those allegations. When you look at the people that brought those allegations and the way they did it, I mean, it's like with you. They can use some process within the NYPD.
They did.
To get you in ways that a regular civilian wouldn't really be necessarily subject to.
Now,
right?
but the thing with my thing is, as I was trying to continue on that part once I was persecuted there, we ended up in an NYPD department trial, and one of the things this Sergeant Orenstein guy who was doing an investigation alleged put my name in, said I was on narcotics. That's how he got his subpoenas, which is illegal because they're administrative. But then at the trial, we asked him, Did you ever see Sal Greco, was he involved in drugs? Did you dole test him? And he said no. So the whole process made up. So instead of dismissing this case, it's an administrative trial, so it's like a setup. So they just railroaded me and just continued to proceed forward.
But you got to pay lawyers and everything.
Oh yeah, I had to pay multiple lawyers. I ended up in front of January 6th committee as well.
Wow.
And it was another case they tried to get me involved in. Mr. Orenstein, he thinks I don't know about, was the end of my career in the NYPD, which I also had to hire a lawyer, and that went nowhere also. But so with my termination, he ultimately terminated me, and they're saying that there's a patrol guy procedure. They kind of altered it, by the way, now, but it was that I knowingly and wrongfully associated with someone who was reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity. That's Roger Stone.
Wow.
So when I sued them, I then found out that
we're kind of walking away from the. Sorry.
I
don't know where we're going.
No, we can walk around because this is like a whole,
you lead me because I don't know where we're going.
Yeah, so you go down here. This is like a side street, but there's a beach just to the right. So they associated and brought in Cardi B to the police academy, who's a criminal.
I saw that, yeah.
And she's like a gangbanger. She sings about rapping, like killing cops, all this crazy stuff. But there's a bigger thing behind that. So I found out about this place. It was named Consofrito in the Bronx.
The restaurant
which is
owned by the brother.
The brother of the police commissioner at that time, Eddie Caban, his brother, Richard Caban. So this place, though, has an infamous character behind it. The manager of this place, allegedly, because the guy's availed his whole career, he's really the owner, is Jimmy Rodriguez. So you want to know who Jimmy Rodriguez is? Well, he's a self-admitted criminal. He's a mob associate, and he's the former owner of Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, where starting out with that place, there was numerous unsolved murders. There was crime, drug deals. They locked up 14 people associated with that place. The Major League Baseball players that were going there, they banned them from going there. All the Yankees were going there.
Wow.
It was notorious for this. And what did they keep alleging? One of the allegations were unsavory characters.
Including Hillary Clinton.
Hillary Clinton. So here's a crazy twist to this. So Jimmy Rodriguez, who hosted Fidel Castro as well at his place, Jimmy Rodriguez, the day that Hillary Clinton announced her Senate run in New York, it was in front of a laundromat which was owned
right?
by the infamous Jimmy Rodriguez, whose business partner got indicted like the next day.
Was she signaling her money laundering? Was that a kind of a tongue-in-cheek?
Well, yes. Here's the thing with her. So Jimmy's associated with many Democrat politicians, And it was Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Jose Serrano, obviously the Fidel Castros. And then continuing to this day, when we talk about con sofrito, you have Carl Hasty, Tish James, Eric Adams, all the Caban family, numerous, virtually almost the entire upper echelon of the police department, all hanging out there. Councilman Ralph Salamanca, Vanessa Gibson, the borough president, lieutenant governor who's indicted going to court now, Brian Benjamin, Kenny Burgos, an ex-assemblyman who's somehow, he's lobbying when he shouldn't be right now, as he's lobbying the housing district. But he was there, they had fundraisers there, Corrine Reyes, assemblywoman, everybody and anybody was there. The now current Lieutenant Governor Anthony Delgado, how is it that you're gonna say Sal Greco can't associate with Roger Stone as a cop?
He's done nothing compared to all these other crazy
And there's
people.
also no allegations of me doing anything criminal or wrong or
So
using...
why did they want you out, Sal? What is it that you were doing?
If this isn't political, I'd say it's personal. It's
but
almost
there must
personal.
be something, though, right? It's not just that you like Roger Stone and Donald Trump.
My investigation shows there was absolutely nothing there other than Sal Greco is friends with Roger Stone. They looked at everything, whether they did it illegally or legally, and that was their end result. That was the only... They said I also was evasive in that I didn't tell them the truth on things because they asked me, are you Roger Stone's security? And the answer is no, I was never his security, and that guy never paid me a dime.
What's the difference if you were?
Well, that's what the judge actually said, because let's be honest. Let's say I was a cop right now, right? Let's say I'm a cop and I'm off duty, and I'm walking down right here with Jason down the street. That make me his uncompensated security.
But if somebody comes at us and tries to beat us up, obviously you're going to do better than me.
I would do better than you, probably,
right.
but still, but that doesn't mean that you're paying me
right
to walk with you.
But even if I was, I don't understand. I see off-duty cops doing security all the time.
But this is the crazy allegation that was done at that time. Meanwhile, the mayor of New York City had a golden opportunity here during my case and my trial to say, look, I did this as a cop. As if you guys don't know, I'm sure if you follow my feed, Eric Adams was a 22-year veteran of the police department. He was a house mouse, actually, but so as a police officer...
What do you mean, office guy?
He was a house mouse. He stayed inside. The guy made like 5 arrests his whole career. He really didn't do much as a cop, other than race bait and do all these other crazy things. So he, as a cop, was found to have associated and done bodyguard work for Mike Tyson, a convicted felon, Louis Farrakhan, an anti-Semite and criminal, and Al Sharpton. How do you do work for these people and associate with these people and never lose your job? But they did charge him. They just never let that investigation go anywhere. It just ended. The only thing he wasn't charged with and ultimately found guilty and left the job for was he spoke out at the very end of his career as a captain. He went on the news. He wasn't allowed to discuss department business. He did, and they hit him with the conduct unbecoming of a police officer, and he retired after 22 years.
But you've identified tons of evidence just from watching your show. I've seen you found a video, a P Diddy, or no, a Biggie Smalls video with a picture
yes, with Eric Adams,
back in the 90s.
He's associated with P Diddy as well. So is Jimmy Rodriguez.
Hip-hop division, right? So wait, let's stay on that for a second,
Yeah.
because Eric Adams, he started in the NYPD transit cops, and then in 1995 or something, that merged with the NYPD.
Correct.
Right?
He was a transit cop. He was in a
But give us the inside scoop on that, because I'm feeling like maybe NYPD officers maybe felt like transit cops were screwballs, and then they get merged together and you're elevating losers, perhaps?
Yeah, because what happened at that time in the police department, it was a merger between a housing, transit, and police department in 1993. But Eric, he was a do-nothing back then. This is what he was a part of back then. It was a group called the Transit Guardians. The overall Guardian Association, which you see of today, at that time was just one. It was a fraternity for all police officers, majority NYPD, but not transit. Transit wasn't part of it. They had their own association. My lawyer at the time, which was Eric Sanders, he was the president. He was outspoken. He's brilliant. And he was for the rights of all police officers. And then here comes Eric Adams, Transit Guardians, going to his big speeches and booing him and doing all kinds of things, heckling him in the crowd because he wanted that position. After this, my lawyer said the hell with this because they were doing some kind of stuff, trying to do things behind his back. So Eric went to, when the police department merged with the transit, he went to become the Grand Council Guardian, and then he became the 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement.
So this elevated him.
This all elevated him. The merger elevated him and gave him some status, because again, he was hanging out with people like Al Sharpton and Louis Farrakhan. He wasn't working, because what he got is a waiver at work to go hang out with them. Kind of like with a PBA or a union delegate, a PBA union delegate, or the head of the PBA, like a Pat Lynch. You never saw him work.
So he's been into corrupt politics for the whole time.
That's all the guy's ever known. I don't know how anybody didn't see this.
Right.
And rising up the ranks, he was automatically in trouble in the state Senate. First day, here's Eric Adams saying, "Show me the money." Then he, as a state senator, he's part of the race casino scandal, which involves his good friend Tim Pearson. From that point, he should have been prosecuted.
What's the race casino?
So the race casino was a casino, the first casino they built up there. I believe it's off the Belt Parkway.
Oh, like a horse track.
Yeah, it's a horse. Well, they had a betting there, and there was a whole scandal with that. And then Eric Adams had to testify, and then his buddies at the time, Senator Sampson, they all got locked up, but Eric didn't get locked up.
How did he avoid that?
Because Cuomo made a deal at that time. They said, okay, we'll prosecute these people.
Where should we go, down here?
You could walk down here. He said, we'll prosecute these people, but Eric will get a pass. Even though if you read his transcript, which I do have a copy of, by the way, it's very damning. How he didn't get indicted was only a favor.
So he's almost like a confidential human informant where he's got indemnity from these things.
He got indemnity, and he shouldn't have, but what happened in that deal was the race casino, 70% of their profits, I believe, go to the state. It was the only good thing that Cuomo's ever done for the state. It was a positive, but it came at the cost of Eric Adams' freedom. He's allowed to roam. And guess what happened after that? He goes to become the Brooklyn Borough president.
Yeah.
We're 6 months in, and I posted this interview he had with Errol Lewis on New York One, and he already had conflicts. He was taking money from China,
Right.
going to China 3 times, and guess who's in the middle of that? A volunteer named Winnie Greco, no relation to me, by the way. He says, she's my volunteer, but somehow she's followed him his whole life. Like, she's worked with him, but somehow she's only a volunteer. And she was the liaison once again for this arch that they were supposed to build, which China and Turkey were giving them money that never got built, by the way.
What arch?
An arch that never got built. There's actually a whole story about it.
What do we need an arch for?
There's an arch in Brooklyn that never was built. Now he wants to bring the arch to Manhattan. Isn't that like just...
It just sounds like a waste of money.
Yeah, but it's not a waste of money, because that means that Eric, somewhere in that phrase somewhere, what's missing is there's a cut for Eric, because that's how he operates.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because right now he's jockeying for a pardon from Donald Trump.
Oh, big time.
He's totally changed his tune, you know?
100%.
The whole time he's been in there, he's been saying, this is a sanctuary city and everybody can come. And
he wanted illegals to vote.
Yeah, and now he was on Fox or something yesterday saying like, oh, the Democrats have opened the border and ruined the city and everything.
But they didn't even call him out for what he was saying.
They let him say it.
He said to buy a loaf of bread, you get taxed on. You don't get taxed for buying a loaf of bread in New York City. Somebody should have stopped him. You're the mayor. Have you ever
stupid.
Have you bought a loaf of bread? He has no idea what he's talking about. He only knows, show me the money. Let's hang out with Jimmy Rodriguez. Let's go party. Give me the money. Show me the loot. Party all the time. Let's hip hop, all this nonsense, and go home. That's what he does. I mean, has anybody seen him do anything different? He's a charlatan who dresses up real nice, puts a little mustard on things, like, you know, like a Frank Lucas, you know, like kind of one of those guys, like an old time. I mean, this guy, he idolized the Supreme Team. There's a whole documentary with him idolizing the Supreme Team, and they were a big drug dealing gang from the 70s, from South Jamaica, Queens, that basically destroyed numerous lives. In the African American community there were so many people dying from the drugs they were providing. It's so bad that the ones that didn't go to jail or have gone to jail said they wish that this never happened. They wish they could have changed their life, and they want to speak to the youth
because
out
they
there.
feel they've betrayed their own
yes,
community.
They can't believe that they would. I mean, they were naive, because when you're young, you're naive.
Young, stupid, on drugs themselves.
But here's
probably.
Eric saying how it's glorious to have these guys on the street corner. It was ridiculous. And another guy who's a part of that in a separate documentary is Corey Pegues, who was an inspector in the NYPD, who somehow, when he should have been picked up and arrested with the rest of the Supreme Team, he was in the military, but he was going to kill somebody that day. And it's all in the documentary.
Wow.
And of course, his buddy, Timmy Pearson.
Now, wait a minute. What's the name of that documentary? You're going a million miles
Yeah,
an hour.
the documentary.
You are so full of information here. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's actually, it was on Showtime. If you put in the Supreme Team or put in Eric Adams' name, there was a whole article in New York Post. You'll see it. It's a documentary about the Supreme Team, which is crazy because one of them got out of jail, started living a good life, and then he's one of the guys that ordered the shooting of 50 Cent, the rapper, which is...
Whoa.
Yeah, it's just insane.
And he's really against Diddy, right?
Yes. P. Diddy, of course, falls on the other side of the aisle because he's a friend of Eric Adams and a friend of Jimmy Rodriguez. Yeah. He got the key to the city, so did Fat Joe, another character that's involved in the world of Jimmy Rodriguez and Eric Adams and Eddie Caban.
Oh, yeah, he was at Consofrito, wasn't he?
He's best friends.
Oops, sorry.
They're best friends.
Wow.
And here's the best part. P. Diddy, there's numerous, I found already 2 articles from the 90s that stated, from the New Yorker and another article, regulars at Jimmy's were P. Diddy and J-Lo. P. Diddy and J-Lo.
J-Lo's in trouble with the gun. But
Yes.
none of this stuff is coming down yet. You're hitting on all of it. And the thing is, Eric Adams is trying to convince primarily Donald Trump
That he's a great guy.
that he's a great guy, and really all that happened was he got a shrimp cocktail from Turkish Airlines. It's equivalent to Clarence Thomas, but in fact,
Hey.
history's going to show, I think, and you tell me what you think, not only is Eric Adams the most corrupt mayor in the history of New York, I think he's one of the most prolific organized crime figures in
Correct.
history.
I think he's not a really smart gangster if you're going to look at it that way, but he's
got his fingers in everything.
Yeah, he used the government and try to operate it as if it was a crime
RICO.
syndicate. But the problem is that's a lot of fingerprints being passed around on things, and now you're seeing the fruits of that. Like this morning, his chief advisor, Ingrid Lewis-Martin, was indicted by Alvin Bragg for bribery with her son, and it was because they took money from a weed involving one of these weed contracts or these buildings of the department, and then they used this money and transferred it over to write a check to buy a Porsche.
Wow.
Which is her son. It has nothing to do with Eric Adams, as much as it's political. Artie Idala, great Artie Idala, who I don't know the last time he's ever won a case other than when he takes your money. So Artie Idala, this is a political case. Where is this political? I want to know if somebody, so Luigi Mangione, who just killed somebody, that's political. Yeah, a murder is political now, right? Is that where we're going to go?
So you had a tweet about that just earlier today. Eric Adams is walking there with the FBI JTTF. Now,
Unbelievable.
when you were in the NYPD, did you interact with the JTTF?
I knew some people that worked there. I myself tried to go to that unit. It was so exclusive. No matter how squeaky clean you are, you better know someone to get in there. It's just such an exclusive
But
unit.
isn't it in itself incredibly corrupt? It's unconstitutional. It's tied directly to the FBI.
Yeah, it's like this is a unit that Tom Donlin, the former police commissioner who was also indicted, he was in charge of this unit at one point. So it's odd how now this unit has come into play with this. In my time, that was a prestigious unit that cops that want to work would want to go to this unit. As time goes on, there was other units like SRG and whatever, now there's CRT, which is going to be disbanded shortly. Those were the units people then opted to say, I want to be active, but I guess I'm not good enough to be in JTTF yet, because you had to know someone to get hooked in. We call it a hook on that job. You need a big hook to get on. Now today, you see Eric Adams, which is probably the most police work that man has ever done in his life.
Walking with the JTTF.
Walking with the JTTF
arraignment for what's his name?
He has about 5 arrests career-wise. He doesn't know when an arrest is, and I'll tell you what, when he was behind the desk as a supervisor, he made life hell because he felt entitled to talk down to people and that he knew better than people.
Calling white officers crackers and stuff like that.
He was always a race baiter.
Can we go back down this way?
Yes,
here?
we can.
Okay, let's do that.
But that's who I knew Eric Adams to be.
Down there or no?
I've never gone that way.
See what people can. We'll check it out. We'll come back if we can't go there.
But
So-
this is what I'm saying with this guy is just unbelievable that people now associate with this guy with MAGA. This guy has destroyed. He finished destroying the city of New York. It started with Bill de Blasio, and when this guy had a chance to turn it around.
He just dug it in deeper.
Yeah, he dug it in deeper because he said the city's for sale. The city's for sale.
So let's talk about that for a second, because there's 2 things. Well, really just one that he's been indicted for. There's a lot of other stuff, and we're waiting for this superseding indictment, but it hasn't arrived yet. He's the Turkey building with the fire code problems. That's the indictment. But there's a bigger problem. I don't know if you saw when I went over to the Walcott Hotel over there by the 14th.
Oh, yes. You had a...
So there's a lot of flashy stuff going on in terms of me almost getting killed by Tren de Aragua.
Yes.
But the way that all came about is really troubling because I just observed the army there, and then I got kicked out by a civilian security guard wearing a shirt that said the Neighborhood Association of Intercultural Affairs. And I started looking into that, and I found out that that had received $79 million from the Department of Social Services. Eric Adams had appointed Molly Wausau Park.
Once again.
So $79 million goes to that thing, and then the chief operating officer, Richard Izquierdo Arroyo, he had been indicted in 2011 for embezzling $115,000 from another nonprofit that he was involved in, and now he's the chief operating officer there. But he's paid $656,000 a year, which is an exorbitantly high salary.
Eric loves appointing these kind of people in positions.
And it's 3 times what the CEO of that is paid. Now, you've talked a lot about the straw donor campaign how the New York Election Commission will do fund matching for low-dollar funders. And you also had a story not related to Arroyo, but some supermarket where employees were making low-dollar... Was that you who had that?
Yes, there was. Okay, so what it was is in Queens, there was actually this guy that owns this big hotel, who's a big donor to Eric Adams. They found a bunch of straw donors. He had a barbecue fundraiser. He was at the house.
Right. And nobody went to the barbecue.
Yeah, and the thing was, he said, well, this guy already had donated the max, which was $2,100. But if he's going to have this little dinner, he can't have it for him, neither can his wife, because the two of them giving a max contribution cannot say, we're having a fundraiser for him, unless it's $500 total. There's caviar right in front of you that probably costs thousands of dollars.
Yeah, you had video of them at basically a mansion with a bunch of Chinese people, but they had recorded that it was a barbecue that cost $500.
Yeah, okay, yeah, $500. That's why it's laughable. And then he's on his own contributions on his own page. There's invalid contributions, and some of them are left blank because he's stealing right in front of your eyes. For every $250 you get, it's 8 to 1. So imagine if all these small donations they give you, you could get a billionaire to easily, funnel things through a straw donor.
$2,000 for every $250.
So but how much money
how does that work, Sal? They're giving out cash and tell these people to go donate the cash?
Correct, or they use their credit cards
or something. Right, he's got the credit card scheme.
The best part was somebody in one of his fundraisers at Zero Bond, another haunt of Eric Adams. Somebody donated to him, so they called the woman up and she said, I don't even know who Eric Adams is, and it was her father that donated twice.
Wow.
Yeah, you can't do that.
But how come Damian Williams hasn't indicted him for this stuff?
Well, now Damian Williams resigned a week ago.
Well, but he did do that after Trump announced that he was appointing that other guy. And it's become pretty normal for incoming president. Well, it never happened before Bill Clinton firing all the U.S. attorneys. That was a Bill Clinton move, but now it has become fairly standard because all that stuff has been super politicized.
Big time.
Do you get into kite surfing much, Sal?
I see it out here all the time. Actually, further down, I believe they play volleyball. It's volleyball. Oh, in Pompano, there's volleyball courts, so they have volleyball out on the beaches. I mean, it's nice to be here. It's like, I'm telling you, to be in exile is pretty nice if you live out here.
Mm-hmm. And so your full-time occupation is you're now an investigator, a podcaster, the show is the job, right?
Correct. It's basically, I've devoted my life to say, okay, you know what? I'm going to change everyone else's life by exposing those that are stealing from you and virtually taking your rights and shoving them in the toilet. They were so busy trying to prove to you that I'm some guy that I wasn't, that they forgot to cover their own tracks. Because usually with these people, it's don't look at me, look at him.
Exactly.
I'm the criminal. Because I'm telling you, that Consofrito stuff, whatever was going on there, I mean, it was a human trafficking report that the police department received in 2021 that went absolutely nowhere. We don't know what happened with that. The state liquor authority was investigating them for obviously availing because Jimmy Rodriguez is the owner.
Now. They closed
but they closed because the landlord got involved. There was media reports. I mean, every day I was banging the drum. Go look at this place and tell me how this is legal. How are you saying Sal Greco and other cops that may have spoken to someone that had a record from 50 years ago, you have to fire them, but all of these people are hanging around Jimmy Rodriguez, who's already, his record is checkered, but the place itself is the Hall of Felons. Fat Joe, Peter Guns, and they're attached, by the way, Cardi B got her start through Peter Guns, another guy affiliated with this. How does it always go back to this place? This is the modern day Raymond nightclub of the political mafia. That's what we got to call it. So it's funny that they're shut down, they closed, but they actually have a new place.
Oh.
It's called Sobro Gardens, a little smaller.
Wow.
Jimmy's there all the time. You want to party all the time, you basically could go there. I don't know what they're doing, but that concerto stuff with Richard Caban, and they're all being investigated because whatever they did, shaking people down, it all stems from there. It was party all the time, and it's ridiculous to even think that a politician or a cop can afford this without there's some kind of free gratuity. Something has to be involved.
Well, but isn't it true that Caban was accused of shaking down local businesses and forcing them to hire
Correct.
private security companies that he and his associates owned?
Correct. That is one of the things that has been investigated. Actually, there was somebody that came forward who, of all places, was from Coney Island, where I used to be a cop for about 7.5 years.
Kind of dangerous there.
Yeah, that's not. Well, he had a juice bar that he creatively made like a nightclub on certain nights to make money. But he started having these 311 complaints dumped on him, which I focused in on who was making these 311 calls because that could be anyone.
Right.
In fact, if you're a cop or whatever these guys, you know someone on the inside, you pick up the phone, you start calling from different locations. 311, there's a party going on here, too many people. Half the time, there was nothing going on there. But they made it a deal. You know why? Later on, this guy, Ray Jenkins, who's part of Eric Adams' nightclub, nightlife, like Office of Nightlife.
Oh, yeah.
So he shows up and he tells him, I know a guy that can stop this 311 stuff. And that's James Caban, Eddie's twin brother.
Right. Now, what about that? That's like a Batman episode,
Yeah.
that the commissioner has a twin?
Yeah, he has a
What
twin
the
brother.
hell?
He has a twin brother, and then he shows up and he tells him, look, give him 500 or whatever it is a week and all your problems go away.
Wow.
Meanwhile, they send a whole platoon there. I saw 30 cops go there. And what were they there for? Did they arrest any? You don't
Shake the place down.
That's what it looks like. They're trying to, so you have all these problems, we'll make them go away. That's a mob move. I'm sorry, that's what it is.
Of course. So let me ask you this, because when you were on the NYPD, everybody knows that the average citizen, you can't exercise the Second Amendment in New York. You can't own a gun. You can't carry a concealed weapon. When somebody like Elon Musk comes to New York City and he has armed security guards, obviously they're interfacing with the NYPD to be able to walk around New York City with concealed carry weapons, right?
Correct.
How do they do that?
Well, I mean, it's got to be concealed, so if you're a police officer, you wouldn't see it. You know that he's somebody famous, so he probably has big-time security, which would mean these are big security firms, former cops, former federal agents. So they're going to get a little leeway in that.
But the cops just look the other way, or does an Elon Musk security team call the NYPD and say, hey, we're coming to town, these guys are
They
gonna be
could
there?
if it's going to be a big event, just because you're going to want an added layer of protection with the cops. But
I got assaulted.
by one of them?
Well, I think it was private security for Twitter, and one of the three who assaulted me showed me a badge, and I couldn't make it out. And I said, well, wait a minute, show me that. Are you NYPD? And then she clammed up and went away. It
Wow.
was two 20-year-old kids and this 50, 60-year-old woman, and the woman had the badge. And the thing is, Elon Musk was there. He had just purchased Twitter. And Twitter at the time had an office on 17th Street.
Yes, I remember it well.
Between 7th and 8th or something like that. And it just occurred to me. So when I called the police after this kid choked me, it was Lieutenant George Ibrahim. Do you know him?
I know the name. I've heard the name.
Yeah, he's a fucking asshole.
Ibrahim.
Because basically they gave me a ticket for disorderly conduct for getting choked. And Super Mensa member Jennifer Caruso wrote a ticket that said, an individual known to the department told the undersigned that the defendant created a public disturbance.
Known to the department.
So who is that woman that's known to the department? Now, by the way, in your career as a cop, have you ever seen a 20-year-old black kid choke out a 50-year-old white guy and then wait around for the cops to show up?
No, usually that means might be a. See, those are good. When people scream on the beach, that's a good thing. If you hear it in New York, look out.
You saw my reaction.
Yeah. He's jumping. I'm like, oh, it's just somebody, they're playing around. But if that happens, usually that means it's probably someone who's either retired law enforcement, was in law enforcement, or is currently on the job, like in the NYPD.
Doesn't she fit the profile of private security owned by Ed Caban and his associates?
Yes, well, the other allegation here is that Ed Caban has been running security. His brothers, see, this is all going back to the 90s. So we say the word on the street was that when Jimmy Rodriguez started Jimmy's Bronx Cafe and all these other nightclubs,
whoa,
it was...
Sal, you know these girls, right?
No, I don't know
well,
them.
we might have to rectify that. Sorry, back to the conversation.
But now, so I'm saying, back in this time,
what did they think of the assassination attempt?
You actually would find around here that there's quite a, it's like 60-40 Democrat around here, but you'll see Trump supporters here, especially on Commercial Boulevard. They drive around.
Sorry, I'm interrupting.
They have the big Trump car, one guy has a huge Trump head on his car. It's hysterical. But so going back to what I was saying, what the Caban brothers were alleged to have been doing, the security, the security for the Caban, for Jimmy Rodriguez and his establishments, and that's how they became who they were all the way up until everything had happened. Because James Caban, who was fired, I don't know if you know that story, he actually was arrested.
But they gave him some kind of security that he wasn't supposed to have,
Yeah,
right?
he had NYPD security because he is the twin brother of the police commissioner. You really have to look closely to
Tell the difference. Yeah, they look a lot alike.
So, if you see him in the street, you don't know if that's Eddie or James. So that's
and do we know if they used that to fool people, to scam?
From what I understand, James used that a lot.
Right.
So James would
pretend to be the commissioner.
He pretended to be a police commissioner and used that card. So that's kind of what was going on here. Only this was going on for years as far as the scheme of this whole security nightclub racket business. He's not, they say he's a consultant. I mean, you're going back, we're going from the 90s on till now. Now again, this is an old story. I wasn't on the job in the 90s, but coming from an array of retired people that were around and know these people and were imminently around, we'll say, the Jimmy's Bronx Cafe crowd, that is what has been alleged, is that they were doing security from the 90s, which means that would have been illegal because you can't do security and be a police officer without filing reports, which is what they said I didn't do, which is rather funny.
That's funny. So they're doing that, and that's what they're trying to jam you up for, and you never even did it. They do the same stuff to me.
They love doing this.
People accuse me of being a tax cheat. I'm like, what are you talking about? I pay my taxes every single year. Makes me think. It's like we were talking before we went on air here. We were talking about our mutual good friend Oren Levi.
Oh yes,
who got all upset.
Viral news,
right.
Bootlicker, as I like to call him, the bootlicker.
Sent me an email saying, "Hey, somebody said you're going behind my back saying I'm a junkie." And I was like, first of all, who do I even know that you know? And second of all, what do I know about you being a junkie? But you seem so upset about it. You're making me think you might be a junkie.
That guy is quite the character. I came across him. He comes to me, and he seems like he's pro-police. But I don't really know his background. So the real background in Oren Levy is, first he's an Antifa guy. Then he's a Black Lives Matter guy.
Right.
Then he's a pro-freedom movement guy. Then he's an
anti-vaccine.
Then he's an anti-NYPD guy. Then all of a sudden he's an Eric Adams guy. Now he was a pro-NYPD guy. And finally now he's a pro-Trump guy when he was against Trump.
So, I think he's just paid to do whatever.
Yes, and when you see him, he looks kind of like a Muppet. I mean, the best way to describe him, he looks like a Muppet. His teeth look rotted out. He stinks like cigarette. I mean, this is not a guy you really want to hang around. I call him, I don't know, low information, best way. He tells you, I've heard, and these are from people that are standing right next to the guy, he chased around numerous Hispanics to say that they were Trendiaragua or they're migrant. This is one of the things I've heard. And he thinks he knows it all. I talk to people. He's a clown, much like the people that he thinks he's talking to. Clowns, this is what they do. He's not a real journalist. He gets laughed at by people.
But the police give him information that
correct.
They want him to put out. And so it appears that he has scoops and things like that.
Like an Eric Adams or Jeffrey Madry, the chief of the department.
Oh, this guy doesn't want to be on camera.
And other people, they want to tell him the information he won't put out. Because
Right.
Eric Adams is all about
He's a shill.
perception management. He's perception management.
Yeah.
So if you perceive, he wants to perceive the narrative. He wants to control the narrative, which NYPD Chief of Patrol John Shell always says, you want to control the narrative. That's what it's all about. It's not about facts, it's controlling the narrative.
So do the police stage protests? Do they control both sides of the protests in the city? Because I've observed that.
What they're trying to do is, how can I say this? I think the NYPD of today's world would like to, I guess, control what's easier. So if they see you as a weaker target, they'll tell you go away. But that gangbanger looking guy, they know they're gonna have 20 guys fighting and he's gonna shoot him, so they're gonna let that guy do whatever he wants. I'm pretty sure you've seen that with your own eyes. Look at the recent arrest of Chuck Zito, who was arrested for a
Is
forged...
he an MMA fighter or something?
Well, yeah, he was on some shows. He's a Hell's Angel. He used to be with
right,
Hulk
right.
Hogan
Howard
back in the
Stern
day.
he used to hang
so
out
Chuck
with.
Zito was pulled over in some kind of bogus checkpoint, and they said that his plate was fraudulent. It's a fraudulent plate. So they take
On
his
his car?
Yeah. First of all, it's a bogus checkpoint. There's no cones. I know this because the unit that did it was the unit I used to work for before I was terminated. I very early on partook in these checkpoints, but they're technically almost unconstitutional unless you follow these procedures. Number one, in a checkpoint, you need to announce them on the radio 24 hours prior. 2, you need to have a sign. 3, you need cones. 4, there needs to be a chase car. 5, there needs to be a decision made by a supervisor every 3rd vehicle, every 4th vehicle. This was, we're just gonna pull this guy over, we're gonna harass him, we see it's a forged plate, and they took his car, arrested him, and why would they do that? I'll tell you why. They're out in Throgs Neck Bridge, they're in the 4 or 5 precincts. It's really easy to pull over the big Caucasian looking guy who's not gonna really give you as much pushback as the guy with the dark tints in the Honda.
And it just
that
makes
says,
it look like
that
they're
tells
doing
you,
something?
Yo, man, I ain't giving you nothing, man. That guy, that's the guy the police are afraid of. They're afraid of lawsuits, and that's what they do. So the same thing would go in the protest. More than likely, you can bluff your way through some of these guys who are afraid to touch these characters. They're suing them. So you're being them. And this is the kind of
Right.
problems you have in New York City.
But that Civilian Complaint Review Board never does anything, does it?
Well, they do things. They do things apparently to like who they want. It's almost like they choose who to pick on, and certain cops.
Because I went to the CCRB with this getting choked, and they just did nothing.
They didn't do anything. Yeah. But if you were, let's say, somebody who might be the guy that I'm talking about, that's a dark-skinned male from the Bronx,
Then
that
they respond.
might respond to, because everything with them is, I kind of say this, and I hope people aren't, they have to be aware of this. Don't be low information. When someone goes to you, vote for me, we're the same skin color, vote for me, we shop at the same store. I mean, you got to have some brains, and that's kind of what they do with city council, the legislation. That's what they do. They pander to that kind of a person. The real person that has a brain like you, no, they want to stomp on you because you're gonna like enlighten the masses, and then they're gonna have an uprising.
Exactly.
They'll have an uprising.
But it seems like with people like Oren Levi, there's almost characters. Are you familiar with this crackhead Barney? Do you know who that is?
I've heard of the name.
Uniska Wahala Kano. She harassed Alec Baldwin at a coffee shop. See, this woman, when I first encountered her, she was always around Oren Levi. She inserted a turkey baster into her vagina and shoved it in my face. I mean, if a man did, it's sexual assault, isn't it? But they wouldn't do anything.
They won't do anything.
They took her away, they protected her. Walter Masterson, he's another one. He dressed up in a Trump outfit on January 6th. I saw him outside Gracie Mansion, dressed in a Trump outfit. He's trying to entrap people into stuff.
Yeah, this guy, I'm like, listen, with this guy, Oren Levy, the best way to say it is, he's got to be getting paid from somewhere, whether it's Eric Adams, the budget management for media office, or the NYPD, or there's some kind of favors. He's involved in 2 lawsuits. I've actually posted this because this clown wants to post some. He had a 2-minute thing with me, and he wants to make it like your termination was you're not a Trump supporter. The guy doesn't know anything. He's really, I don't know. That's why I say low information. You follow him, listen to him. He's low information. Has he come up with a good video here and there? Look. A broken clock is correct twice a day. That's
and
the
the
same
cops
one.
place him where all the action is all the time.
And he also gets exclusives
Right,
with all these migrant shelters, and you go, How is he getting there and getting in first and
Cops
not?
are telling him
You're
where to
not
go.
getting it. And then other people aren't allowed to go there. And he's actually interviewed the migrants themselves, and the
He's
migrants
inside there.
you've seen it, and you're like, why is he allowed to do that and other media is not? So clearly,
They won't even give me a press pass. They've denied it
so
every
they deny
time.
it because you're critical of the administration.
Exactly. They only want people who are going to present the NYPD in a positive light. They stage
Control the
the
narrative.
arrests that they're allowing the media to cover.
We got to
It's-
control the narrative. That's the NYPD. John Shell tells you the big secret every time. We want to control the narrative. So you can't be a critical thinker. You can't critique the NYPD because they want to control the narrative. They tell you right in your face, and it's constant with these people.
And towards that end, Sal, there's a couple of not very well-known units, like the street crime unit. and-
CRT was the one, because they got rid of all these units. I'm a proponent of bringing them back only because each individual precinct had these units. They decided to get rid of them in 2021. They were pandering, actually 2020, to pander to people in Minnesota, miles away, that have nothing to do with New
What do you
York
mean,
City.
for George Floyd?
Exactly. That's what they did it for. It was all for that. Has nothing to do with day-to-day operation in New York City, but they disbanded the unit. Now there's nobody in plain clothes. They have to have.
No, I'm not talking about that. Maybe I have the name wrong, but there was a unit that said that they were actually hiring actors, civilians, to go undercover and do all kinds of weird things, dress up as old ladies. I mean, I found out about this stuff.
I'd
when
have
I
to see that. I know.
I'm going to send that to you. I think, if
because I only know of these units, and I was because you have anti-crime, or they use undercover cops to do the buy and bust, or the prosops, the prostitution, which I guess is legal now in New York City because they have all kinds of issues in Queens.
In Queens,
but
yeah.
they'll show up with a camera and Kaz Dordrio there and say, look at me, and then those guys are right back out 5 minutes later doing the same thing times 10. It's just a revolving door of criminality there because nobody's ever held accountable. And it's funny because they make you out there in New York City taxpayer believe they don't get along and they have all these problems, but yet they were all partying at Consofrito together. So you can't have it both ways. Either you don't get along and you don't talk, but obviously that can't be true because you're all partying together at this nightclub.
yeah, it's like professional wrestling. They want to present as enemies, but they're
It's WWE. That's what it is. Behind the scenes, we're all friends, but in front of the camera, we hate each other.
So
But-
Letitia James was also there
Oh, yes.
at Consofrito and
She's-
photographed with that guy Jimmy, right?
Yes.
Smiling, happy.
She's all happy,
How
smiling.
come she's not getting indicted?
She should be investigated immediately. First of all, she actually sexually assaulted someone as someone who came out
What?
and was a victim. She was covering this up. She covered up another sexual assault of somebody who was sexually assaulted by her chief of staff. There's also other women behind that. It's all public knowledge, just that nobody has actually gone forward with it because Tish James is a bully behind the scenes as the Attorney General. She also has these, you have to understand, if she's hanging around a character like Jimmy Rodriguez in a place like Consofrito, that place had allegations of human trafficking. The only reason she should be there herself, even if she does,
Is to bust it.
to investigate
Right.
it. She's smiling. She's been pictured with Jimmy outside of Consofrito, so they know each other. She has no problem with what's going on there. Here's a woman that has the power to indict you and make you a convicted criminal, yet she's hanging out with one. She's
And
hanging
she
out with
probably
them.
is herself, not convicted, but she's
Not yet.
I mean,
And-
the human trafficking is one of the most troubling aspects, and it seems quite clear that that is what's going on at that Walcott Hotel. When I told the detectives in the 14th
They don't wanna hear it.
precinct, well, not only did they not want to hear it,
They don't
they
wanna hear it.
lied to me. They told me the guy's name was Detective Johnson. Did you hear that whole exchange?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah.
So what is that? How can the police lie to me and lure me to a location where I might get killed?
Because they don't want to deal with you. They just don't like. They may not like.
Forget about me. There's a 1-year-old baby there
Yeah,
being passed around like a bag of weed.
Every day, cops get a ton of people telling them a ton of different things. So they might either take it that way or they're told, brush everything over. We don't want anything, because that more falls in line with this administration where, again, we can't have somebody who has a track record, former lawyer or a lawyer now. They don't like that because he's smarter than them. So don't
I'm not
take
a lawyer.
Well, you filed things though. But so I'm saying, he knows the law. He's filed paperwork. He's done all these things. They don't like it. They don't want that.
I'm suing the city.
He doesn't. Yeah, that's another factor. So
They hate
so
that.
they don't want that. So what do? They're going to tell them from the top when they go, listen, if this guy comes around, brush
Knock
him
him
off,
out of the box.
do whatever you have to do.
Do you know who the judge is in Goodman versus City of New York?
Who?
Jessica G.L. Clark. She worked for Letitia James from 2019 to 2023. Mine is one of her first cases.
Oh my God.
So it was dismissed August 31st, and then Eric Adams was indicted September 9th or 10th. So I have now filed a motion for relief from the judgment and a motion for reconsideration. It's been sitting on the docket since October.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Very odd.
Yeah.
But then again, nothing is surprising me with the
They're
Eric
just
Adams
playing
administration.
out the clock.
They're going to wind down the clock with you and anything else. But you could bring up, see, somebody should file motions to, to sanction her. You can't be hanging out in a place. I'm sorry. You're an attorney general. I don't know anyone else that would do that, and it was a constant thing. And also when there were big fundraisers, so there has to be money around. Because another allegation was straw donors. As we know, Carl Hastie has a history of this in the past. So does Eric Adams, obviously. And the Democrat Bronx Party couldn't find $400,000. And in one of them, it says something about being at Consorting for $3,000, but it wasn't a party. But it clearly was, because you could go back and look at the party they had there.
Yeah.
But they're not classifying that as, there's 4 other parties they had that's nowhere to be found. This is what they do. And then they want to tell you, but this is political persecution.
Oh yeah, it's just so crooked.
There's all kinds of evidence on you. How can you say that that's political, but what you're doing is, come on, that's like, this is what we're facing.
It's crazy, man.
There's
so much to talk about here, Sal. I hope that you and I will be able to do some more shows and continue talking about this.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure you would always love to come back here, because this is living in exile is nice down here in Florida,
Yeah, we just got a little radio interference here that seems to have frozen the camera. Let me see if I can get that back. You know what? I think we got a little radio interference, so I think this might be a good time for us to end for today. But I want to thank you for meeting with me and spending the time.
It's an honor.
It was my pleasure.
You guys need to listen and follow him. I know some of you say some crazy things about him, but sometimes when you're critical and ask questions, that's what's needed in society. He's asking questions, like just anyone else. Or do you want to fall into the control the narrative and perception management that Eric Adams' administration have been basically, bullying all the New Yorkers for 3 years plus now? The choice is yours.
One more time, tell everybody how they can get the Sal Greco Show on all your different channels.
Go to Rumble or YouTube, type in The Sal Greco Show, or also any major podcast streaming platform, same thing, The Sal Greco Show. Follow me on X, The Sal Greco, same thing on Instagram. I also have Truth Social. It's at Head of the Table, but Truth Social, is really the audience of one guy. That's the main thing. I like to tell you, there's no traction.
Sal, thanks for everything you're doing.
Thanks
for meeting with me today.
Thank you.
And we will speak again soon. Thanks everybody for watching, and don't forget, you can sponsor Crowdsource the Truth by going to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/.